Welcome back to the Michael Brooks Show. Joining us now Brandon Sutton says it's funny. I'm disgusted. And joining to commiserate with us on this just embarrassing. I mean, first of all, endorsing two candidates in a sort of pathetic pseudo-woke play, totally disrespecting Bernie Sanders, is to help with the catharsis here is David Feldman. He's host of the David Feldman Show, stand-up comedian, writer for any number of people, from Triumph the Insult Comic Dog to Dennis Miller, back in a time when Dennis Miller was funny, they tell me. And he's also a huge Bernie bro, major supporter of the movement. David Feldman, thanks for being here.
Big Bernie bro, from way back, before you were born. I'm a socialist from way back. David Brooks and I belong to the same socialist book club of the book of the month club before you were born.
Oh, okay.
David Brooks, big socialist. Yeah.
What were you guys reading?
The Marx, Engels. I was a red diaper baby. My parents weren't communists. I was born with irritable bowel syndrome, and that's why I was a red diaper. But listen, I'm pissed off. So I don't want to make any jokes here. I'm pissed off. I'm a big Bernie bro. I want to get there just like everybody else. And I'm pissed off at the New York Times. Pissed.
Well, so am I, David.
I called my sister. I said, change your password. I'm no longer using it to log into the New York Times.
Well, I feel exactly the same way, David.
I'm sorry?
I feel exactly the same way. I'm disgusted and embarrassed.
I was pissed off. I was pissed off. And I got angry because, I'm a big Bernie bro.
Yep.
Big Bernie bro. And I was going to write a letter to the editor, but then I thought, what would Martin Luther King, what would Dr. Martin Luther King do?
Well, I'm sure we were just explaining why saying this sort of thing is maybe not the best approach, but...
No, I'm interested.
Okay, all right, yeah, all right. Well, Brandon's interested. By the way, Brandon Sutton is here with us, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, I see Brandon. And I think Dr. Martin Luther King would say, let the gray lady talk. Let's hear what the New York Times has to say. There's room for every opinion. Let's take it all in. And I think Dr. Martin Luther King would ask me to reevaluate Bernie, to ask myself, has he alienated women? And as a woke male, I think nobody likes Bernie. I think he doesn't have any friends in the Senate. I think he owes Hillary Clinton an apology for saying during the debates, enough with the damn emails. I think when he at the convention, when he put her name, he nominated her by acclamation. When he was out on the campaign trail, pushing for Hillary, I thought that was patronizing to women, and he owes her an apology.
Wait a second, Dave. Okay, all right. You know what, David? I'm going to get this. This is like Lucy and the football here. Every time you come on, I think we're on the same page, and then you start on these different roads. So you're actually saying, with a straight face, presumably, that Bernie Sanders, who ran a totally easy campaign against Hillary Clinton, took issues off of the table instead of attacking her like any normal candidate would do, then nominated her at the convention, then did, I believe, over 30 appearances for her, including in places like Michigan, where she refused to campaign through a combination of arrogance and incompetence. You're saying that this was all a giant act of him being patronizing?
Condescending, supercilious. It's like holding the door open for the woman, saying, you can't do it without me, Bernie Sanders. It was degrading, frankly. And I like Bernie, and I want all the things he wants. But as a man, we have to ask ourselves, I have a daughter. Do I want her being propped up by an old white man like Bernie Sanders? I think it was offensive, and I think that's why Hillary lost.
So in other words, because Bernie Sanders supported her and campaigned across the country for her and worked as hard at for her. That's why she lost.
It was solicitous. It was unnecessary. He was saying a woman can't win without me. And I think a lot of people in the blue wall, in the Rust Belt, said, hey, she's weak. Bernie's right. She's weak. She needs a guy. So, yeah, I think, hey, look, I want everything Bernie wants. I'm a Bernie bro. But I have to ask myself, what would Martin Luther King do? And he would say, check your gut. And I checked my gut, and I'm thinking maybe there's a little misogyny on Bernie's part. Elizabeth Warren, for example. I want to talk about the endorsement, but, I'm for revolution, not evolution. You know that about me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Revolution, not evolution. I am Bernie all the way. But I have to say, if Bernie told Elizabeth Warren in a private conversation that a woman can't get elected president, then I got to reconsider. If Bernie's a misogynist, then I want evolution, not revolution.
Wow. So basically, You're saying that based off of a report, a leak by somebody either in the Warren campaign or somebody close to Warren, or maybe some journalists that Warren presented her side of the conversation about. And even though we have video of Bernie Sanders going back to the 1980s, encouraging women to run for office, saying that there could be a woman president, that you believe Warren's version of this story for no apparent reason. And also that because of a private comment that there's a dispute about, you don't believe in things like Medicare for all anymore.
I believe in everything Bernie believes. I do. But if he said a woman can't get elected, then I'm not so sure health care is a human right. I'm not.
Brandon, can you help me here?
I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of a light negging between friends,
No, I'm just saying I want everything Bernie wants, but if it turns out in a private conversation he expressed doubt that a woman can't be Donald Trump, then I think we have to go much slower on reducing the price of prescription drugs. And that's my taking a good long look in the mirror as a woke male and keeping it real, which is,
That's what Dr. King would have said.
Dr. King would tell me to do that. I think the problem with your show, and I'm a big fan of yours,
yeah.
I'm a Bernie bro, but I think we have to lay off these purity tests.
Right.
Like Lula, for example. You like Lula. You interviewed Lula.
Yes. Big fan of Lula.
He's my hero. He's your hero, even though he has a prison record.
Well, he was a political prisoner, David.
He was. I don't care. See, that's the difference. I don't need to know why he went behind bars. He paid his price. He paid his debt to society. He's out. This is you with the purity tests.
Well, he
committed. I don't know.
Well, he was released because the Intercept, actually, Glenn Greenwald's now getting politically persecuted by the Brazilian regime. They actually showed that the prosecution of him was corrupt from the outset. They demonstrated, so the Supreme Court was shamed into letting him out temporarily.
But whatever. The point I'm making, he's a great guy. That's the point. I don't have purity tests. Dr. Martin Luther King.
Right.
You've seen the mugshots. He was arrested countless times. But I measure the entirety of the man.
Right.
No purity test. Dr. Nelson Mandela, he did time. Dr. Malcolm X, he did time. Dr. Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Eugene Debs, some of my favorite rap artists like Dr. Dre, they all did time. But I don't hold them up to purity tests like Michael Brooks does. Everybody has to be pure.
Well, I've actually been saying for a long time, I don't think so. I think you just need to have a solid political agenda. But so wait, are you saying? I just want to understand where you're coming from.
I'm a Bernie bro. I'm a socialist from before you were born.
Before we were born.
Okay.
So let's get back to that in a second. So in 1964, We all know that LBJ said any number of horrible things. Barely. Probably he did say it in front of the press. They just didn't report it then. He said racist stuff. He said anti-Semitic stuff. He said sexist stuff. All sorts of stuff. So if you heard him say those things, would you then be neutral between him and Goldwater, or say that he shouldn't sign the Voting Rights Act or the Civil Rights Act? I mean, I'm just doing your logic here, David.
I resent your challenging my liberal bona fides. My grandfather marched in Selma with Bull Connor. He worked for Bull Connor. And for you to challenge my bona fides is offensive to me.
Wait a second. You think it's a liberal bona fides that your grandfather Bull Connor was the terrorist sheriff who was sicking dogs and hoses and God knows what else that we don't even have historically established on civil rights marchers. So your grandfather was with him.
Now we're blaming dogs for racial intolerance. Let's move on, okay? Let's just.
All right, David. You know what, David? I'm getting fed up. Okay, the New York Times first they totally, they didn't give Bernie a fair shake at all, which we knew was going to happen. And then they did something that was just utterly embarrassing, which if you were a Warren supporter, which I'm beginning to suspect you are, you have all of the markings.
No. Bernie.
Really?
Bernie.
So you're going to vote for Bernie?
I would have voted for Bernie in 2016. I would have voted for him.
You would have? Well, you could have voted for Bernie. What happened?
I know, but I voted for Hillary. But I would have voted for Bernie if I could, but I couldn't. I voted for Hillary.
Oh, well, why couldn't you have voted for him?
I just couldn't. I wanted to.
Okay.
Because I'm a lefty from way back.
Way back. Brandon, do you have anything to add here?
All I can say is, you know what doctor hasn't been behind bars? Dr. Henry Kissinger.
I'm sorry?
Ooh,
I'm sorry?
David, listen to Brandon.
I was going to say, you know what doctor hasn't been behind bars? Dr. Henry Kissinger. Maybe we should, take a little lesson from him. You can get your doctorate without, serving time, which most people don't know.
Dr. Henry Kissinger.
Dr. Henry Kissinger, Reverend Dr. Hillary Clinton, Reverend Dr. The Reverend Dr. Sister Hillary Clinton.
The Reverend Dr. Sister Hillary Clinton. Absolutely. So you hate Henry Kissinger, though, because you're a lefty.
I hate Henry Kissinger, yes. And I think there's something appealing about the New York Times endorsing two people. I think that's good.
But
it's all about choice. It's a good look. Big Ten thinking.
Wait, Brandon has another question for you.
Not to play devil's advocate, but what do you do in a situation where you're in a primary and you've been told that you can vote for either Warren or Klobuchar and it's just fine? Either one is fine. How is that information actionable? If you're in Iowa, who do you vote for?
Well, it's a good question because we have someone like Amy Klobuchar who says we shouldn't dream big. That's good. And then there's Elizabeth Warren who says there's nothing wrong with dreaming big, so long as those big dreams never come to fruition. That's also good. So I like that choice going in and then calling an audible. I like that freedom at the last minute to choose between Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren.
Wait a second. Wait. You just distilled this, that Amy Klobuchar says we shouldn't dream big, and Elizabeth Warren says there's nothing wrong with dreaming big, just as long as those dreams don't come into fruition.
Yeah. Well, obviously, again, I'm a Bernie bro.
Right.
From way back. But you didn't, the two of you obviously you didn't read the New York Times endorsement because it's really a choice between charisma and storytelling. If you read the editorial, they praised Elizabeth Warren for her storytelling ability.
Uh-huh.
But they didn't specify which story. Was it the one about her Native American heritage? Was it the one about never taking money from a super PAC? Or was it the one about how she's going to fight for Medicare for all? They didn't specify which story, so I found that lacking. Whereas they also said, if you're in the mood for charisma, Amy Klobuchar. I have to agree. So I'm leaning towards Amy Klobuchar because I think the New York Times made a better case for Amy Klobuchar's charisma than they did for Elizabeth Warren's. Yeah, she had Midwest charisma.
Oh, my God.
Like when she eats an egg salad sandwich with her comb instead of a fork. Although, when you think about it, that's not really charisma. That's just her being an enchantress. I find that. And they praised her style of leadership, Michael. Bernie talks about this revolution, but Amy's all about leadership, leading from behind. Like when she berates her staff and throws coffee cups at them, says they're dim-witted community college dropouts. That's how you spark the loyalty necessary to mobilize a mass movement of Americans desperately thirsting for moderation.
Well, I mean, yeah. Oh, wait. So, okay, the New York Times writes in their endorsement, reports of how Senator Klobuchar treats her staff give us pause. They raise serious questions about her ability to attract and hire talented people.
The problem is her staff is stupid.
I love they just double-negged the staff. Absolutely abusing your staff we're not that concerned about. But if you abuse them too much, you're only going to be able to get Dunskies.
Right.
Is that how
Can I just say something? Can I just say something about your attitude and Mr. Sutton's attitude?
Yes.
Your snarky attitude?
Yes.
She throws coffee cups at her staff, right? She berates her staff.
Yes.
But if a man did that, you know what people would say? They'd say, can you imagine if a woman did that? So let's back off with the double standards once removed. What I'm saying here is second wave double standards, Michael Dukes and Mr. Sutton. And this is this new double standard once removed. Okay? So ask yourself, yes, Amy Klobuchar throws rocks and at her staff, but suppose a woman did that. Ask yourself that. What would you say?
I guess it's okay then.
I'm actually not too down on Amy Klobuchar. I can't spell her name, but I will say that I find her dedication to vibrating at a pleasing frequency quite, it's. I don't know who told her what.
She has excuse me for 1 second, okay, Donald Trump. She has a condition, okay? She's scared shitless.
Is that really it? Because she vibrates.
You're making fun. You are making fun of people who are scared shitless. I happen to have a son who's scared shitless, and I don't have a sense of humor about people who were born scared shitless. You smug lefties. I'm sorry, and I'm a Bernie bro. You know that.
Well, I'm increasingly not knowing that, David.
She's Amy Klobuchar. I mean, it's hard to find much sunlight between her and Bernie in many ways.
Well, I want to go back to Warren for a second because it really, you do, and no offense, David, but I just think as we listen to you talk, not wanting to actually achieve anything, but wanting the sort of brand of wanting to have big change, you do sound like a Warren person.
I am. Well, no, I mean, she's my first choice.
Wait a second. Wait. I thought Bernie was your first choice.
Well, my Bernie is my. If I have no second choice, then I'm voting for Elizabeth Warren. Her father was a janitor?
Yes, I did know that.
And what's great about Elizabeth Warren is that's all we know about her father, that he was a janitor.
Do you like that she calls him daddy at times? Do you think that that's the kind of folksy thing that will flip a Trump voter to her?
Well, I've suggested that she also call him Meemaw. She should call him Meemaw, too.
Now, I know, David, I know that for a long time, and including people like me who've been critical of Warren, we both, because Donald Trump obviously attacked her in a racist way, and because I'm actually not into purity politics, but also because people are very policing and very controlling around the parameters of what you can critique about Warren. But people like me didn't mention anything about her saying she was a Native American for decades, or her recipe that she put in a recipe book that she said was a family recipe, but all of that. And I've always said
powwow chow.
And I've always said, hey, you know what? Even if you don't want to, and plenty of Native American people still find this to be deeply offensive, but even if you don't want to go to the merits of the case, as much as, you can be uptight and whatever in a Democratic primary, obviously Donald Trump's going to dine out on it. And it might be a real vulnerability for her, for a broad set of voters who find it, phony and dishonest and weird. I've heard you talking. I haven't heard any doctors. I haven't heard about Dr. Leonard Peltier as an example, but you surely should be concerned about this.
Her authenticity.
And also how offensive it is to so many members of the Native American community.
Whoa. That's her identity, my friend. She's being authentic, lying about her ethnic heritage and pretending that she can let her hair down and have a beer with you. That's her identity. That's authentic. That's an authentic Harvard technocrat, and she has every right to exercise her culture without you passing judgment on being a Harvard technocrat. I find you intolerant.
So I've also heard that because it was demonstrated by the Boston Globe that she did not get her job because she claimed she was Native American, but she did let Harvard list that they had a Native American on faculty. She did the powwow chow. You don't think this is a problem?
She's always offering to have a beer. Have a beer with Elizabeth Warren. She has a drinking problem, obviously. That suggests some, perhaps. The Native Americans have a problem with drinking, so obviously there's something there. And the thing that you don't understand as a white male,
right? Well, wait, Brandon is not a white male. Excuse you.
Yeah, but he could pass for a white male. He's got that white male attitude. You're not a woman, Brandon. You're not a woman. And, not only am I a Bernie bro from way back, but I believe in women. And right. I have treated women with respect before they even deserved any. That's how far. And, I don't know what it's like over at the Michael Brooks show, but I found out that women get paid 70 cents on the dollar. When I found that out, I immediately began paying all the women on my show 80 cents on the dollar across the board. No questions asked.
This is what an ally looks like. It sounds like. I want you to take note. I want you to take note,
exactly,
Michael.
Brandon. Thank you.
I got a lot
Brandon,
to learn.
Thank you.
We all have a lot to learn, to be frank. It's.
Did you know that Amy Klobuchar? This is what I like about Amy Klobuchar.
Yes.
And again, I'm a Bernie bro, but I have to say, you may not know this about Amy Klobuchar, but her father was an alcoholic who was married 3 times and ended up completely broke on Medicaid. And, she doesn't like to talk about that unless it's on national television in front of millions of people because she respects her father's privacy. And that's what I'm looking for my daughter. I'd like to think when my daughter runs for president, she'll respect my privacy the way Amy Klobuchar respects her father's privacy. Because in the end, the one thing I want the world to know about me is that I was an alcoholic, divorced 3 times, and ended up flat broke.
You know what, David? I can barely take any more of this. Don't you think that if you, and clearly you're some type of Warren, Klobuchar, whatever, shouldn't both of these candidates be pissed? Because it would have, I mean, I don't think a New York Times endorsement is such a big deal outside of a certain very, very narrow segment of the population, which Elizabeth Warren was probably doing pretty well in anyways, along with Mayor Pete. But at the same time, a good, clean endorsement would have been good for her. And Klobuchar, the media keep trying to make her happen, but she's never happening. That would have been a real thing if she had a straight up endorsement. Aren't they sort of in this really try-hard way actually hurting both of these candidates by making this ridiculous dual endorsement?
Michael. I didn't want to do this, but I'm going to use a very sophisticated term, and it's going to be intimidating.
Yes.
So get ready to bend to my hyper-educated, technocratic will. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm going to explain the New York Times endorsing two people. And I'm going to use a term you've never heard before, which means you and Brandon are going to discover that I'm smarter than the both of you because I'm using a term you've never heard before. So you'll trust my judgment because I know this term and I speak 7 different languages.
Oh, my God. What is the term? Jesus Christ.
I just want to set this up so you know I'm better than you. I'm better, but I'm going to help you. Okay? Because I'm hyper-educated.
Right.
But I'm looking out for you. I'm looking out for you in a paternalistic way. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, be prepared to hear how much smarter I am than you. And this will explain the New York Times editorial.
Yes.
Are you prepared?
I'm prepared.
Okay, here's the term. Get ready to feel inferior and ask me for guidance. Okay, here's the term. Cognitive dissonance. See how smart I am? You see how smart? I just used a term. Okay?
Look.
So listen, I'm not lording it over you. Okay?
Hey.
I happen to know the meaning of cognitive dissonance,
Well,
and you don't.
I might, and I don't see how this is helping your case.
No, I'm just trying to show you that you should kind of, with all due respect, keep your mouth shut and let a technocrat like me decide what you really need without having to listen to you. Okay? In other words, I'm better educated. I have more diplomas. I'm not better than you. I'm just entitled to a much bigger slice of the pie than you are. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
What about Brandon? You entitled? Brandon happens to have, I believe, a PhD.
No, I do not.
Okay,
Brandon?
just short of a PhD.
Just short of a lot of things.
Just short of a PhD.
Well, he has
That's fantastic. But listen. I want you to have a good life, so long as it doesn't cost me anything, and your child doesn't take up a space at an exclusive private school reserved for my kid. Because if you get in the way of my child, I will cut you. But other than that, we all want the same things.
David, wasn't that enough? Do you think that Elizabeth Warren telling an activist that her kids were public school educated, even though they mostly went to private school, that might be another thing that could be a problem against Trump?
Well, that's cognitive dissonance, being able to keep two opposing ideas in your head, the facts and the truth. And that's what you learn going, when you live at Harvard, you learn to keep two separate ideas in your head. That comes with intellectual rigor. I'm for Medicare for all. I'm not for Medicare for all. That's what an intellectual does. She has the ability to see both sides of an issue.
Right.
On one hand, healthcare is a moral issue. On the other hand, I have health care, so who gives a shit?
But my question is, I don't care about this in relation to Bernie because I don't think it is that meaningful. It would have been funny if they endorsed Bernie. It would have shown that they had some self-reflection. But isn't just offensive to Warren and Klobuchar?
Well, that's what I was trying to say.
Sorry?
Like, is it not just offensive?
Sorry?
Is it not just offensive to Warren and Klobuchar? I mean, I'm not a big fan of Warren or Klobuchar, but I can acknowledge that their politics and their policy prescriptions are like different. You know, they have different prescriptions for society to a certain.
Well, yeah. I mean, Klobuchar tells us not to dream.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Warren says we can dream just so long as those dreams don't come.
Yeah, Klobuchar is the black pill fuck it candidate. You know what? Whatever. Like let's just go like buck wild. And you know, Warren has ideas of various degrees. But isn't endorsing both of them just basically treating them as though they're interchangeable? Like, okay, well, you know what? Either Amy or Warren is fine. I mean, I imagine that there is just some like theoretical person who is like, well, maybe 5 or 6 people all across America who were leaning towards Warren or Klobuchar. Now they're just left, without any kind of guidance. Shouldn't we think about like that, person?
Okay, let me explain something to you, Mr. Sutton. You're short of a PhD, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay, as a technocrat, I find your use of the words policy prescriptions to be somewhat anodyne and childish, if I may be so bold, because you will discover when you finally do get your PhD, you will soon discover that the American people are too stupid to understand policy prescriptions, okay? Because they don't have your PhD.
Well,
you will have to infantilize the American people, because how else do you justify all that work going towards your PhD? Do you understand what I'm saying? That if you have a PhD, it then follows that everyone else is stupid. So you can't discuss policy prescriptions with the American people. You have to tell them a story. Okay? This is something you will learn when you get your PhD, and you will begin to tell a story to the American people. Okay?
No, I mean, I agree with you a little bit. Not that people are too stupid to understand policy prescriptions, but that the idea that people don't care about policy has kind of been an underlying current to the Democratic Party's, like their brand for a while, for lack of a better word. But doesn't that just hurt, Warren? Like who, like for, again, better or worse, whether I like her policies or not, she's a very policy heavy candidate. That's like her, main claim to fame. Doesn't that kind of...
Well, not really. Not really, because if you're part of the consultant class like I am, you have to push the idea that the American people are stupid, and you have to manipulate them with story that they can't grasp policy because I'm educated. And if I'm educated, that means other people have to be stupid, which means they can't understand the policy that I study to get my master's and eventually my PhD. This is something... I don't think you understand how this works.
I don't know how anything works. But I'm of the opinion, honestly, if you had gotten any 12 people off the street, like just randomly, and put them in a room to interview all like the candidates, they would have asked better, more poignant questions than the New York Times editorial board. Like, had you just, gone out...
But they don't have PhDs.
I mean...
They don't have diplomas. How can you trust somebody without a diploma?
I mean, that's actually the problem, I think. When you spend all your time in academia or any of these like specialized, thought industries, for lack of a better term, you end up...
Are you proposing... Wait a second. Hang on for one second. Are you proposing some Hobbesian nightmare where somebody with a degree from Oklahoma State University could know as much as somebody who graduated from Yale?
I mean,
that's chaos. That's anarchy.
I've spent a lot of time over the past week watching Gilmore Girls, so my faith in Yale has been dramatically reduced. But I will say, no, I think that the problem we actually have with our technocracy is that they're not really experts in the classical sense. They don't have any like real claim to expertise, so much as they are like upper middle class yuppies who are allowed to pretend like they're experts because they're upper middle class yuppies. Like, I think a large part of Warren's like plans have unnecessary, essentially unnecessary positions baked in for the technocratic class when they're unnecessary. Oh, I said unnecessary twice, but when it shouldn't be a jobs program.
Hang on for one second. Certainly, you're not suggesting that working in a Warren administration should be anything more than a resume builder.
Yeah. I mean, we have this revolving door between public and private institutions that like it. it's hard to deny that it feels like a lot of these, plans that call for, we have to have this committee to investigate AI and facial recognition and the racial bias behind that. We have to have this, this committee for this new agency, to handle the bureaucracy of finding out, or rather for handling the transition to Medicare for all. It feels like a lot of these things are just, well, I have all these stakeholders in my campaign. I have all these people who I know would be great in this position, but maybe the position doesn't need to exist in that function. Maybe we need to not necessarily get away from the idea of technocracy, putting the right people in the right jobs, but get away from the idea that's what we have right now. I mean,
I hear you,
David.
I hear you. Okay,
make your final case here, because we got to go to get to the post game. So, first of all, I'm very angry at you. You came again on my show under false pretenses, and but nonetheless, you are here. So, as Bill O'Reilly would say, you have the final word.
Okay, Mr. Sutton, I encourage this. I like a spirited debate. As long as I ignore your points and I shout louder than you do. Okay? So I agreed with, I enjoy a spirited debate. But let me just say something about Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren. They have a story, okay? And that's what the New York Times understands, is they have a story. Bernie, who I love Bernie, but he doesn't have a story. He's never once, held a competition to have a beer with him. I have no idea if Bernie Sanders was ever assaulted by his gynecologist.
Ooh.
Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't.
Yikes.
But it would be nice to know if he opened up about his personal life.
I'm pretty sure he's.
Joe Biden had a child who died. Okay, so for him, death is personal. Has anyone ever died in Bernie's life? Maybe. I'd like to know if Bernie ever had someone he loved die. That's something we should know about a president. He needs to open up more. Otherwise, quite frankly, I'm for evolution and not revolution. Because
David Feldman, I hate you. You are.
I may disagree with your opinion, but I will fight to the death of me to make a fortune going on cable television news spouting nonsense.
David Feldman, host of the David Feldman Show. Thank you so much.
That was great. Are we still on?
Yeah, we're still on. You just watched a Michael Brooks Show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.